Today on the Videomaker Podcast, we talk to Sven Pape all about editing. Sven runs a very popular YouTube channel called This Guy Edits, where he really gets into the profession and the craft of editing. Sven has been in the industry for years and has worked with James Franco, James Cameron, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and a bunch of other folks that are household names. So he really knows what he's talking about. And we found this conversation to be very educational. It's a great conversation. As always, if you've been listening to the podcast and you enjoy it, we'd love it if you went to iTunes and gave us a 5-star review and hit the subscribe button. On Spotify, you can do the same thing, hit the follow button, I think. But the great thing is it'll deliver the podcast right to your mobile device every time it comes out. We release these at 5 a.m. Pacific time on Mondays, which most people like to be sleeping at that time. So you don't have to think about downloading the podcast. Just hit the subscribe button. It'll come right to you. Okay, so enough of all that. Let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Videomaker Podcast. I'm Mike Wilhelm. With me, as always, to my left is Haley LaPlante.
Hi.
And to my right is Chris Monlux.
Hello.
And today's special guest, Sven Pape. Sven, how's it going?
Going well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, Sven, I think maybe most of our audience who knows you from your YouTube channel, This Guy Edits, which, I really enjoy your approach here where, I would say 90% of everyone who covers editing on YouTube is probably doing like procedural stuff. Like, here's how to get into Premiere and, do this effect. And they really walk you through what buttons to press. Whereas you really focus a lot on the theoretical side of editing, which is refreshing, at least to me. So maybe just to get started, how did you get involved in editing? How did you acquire the knowledge and the skills that you have today?
Just by doing. So I studied at the American Film Institute, but I studied producing and I didn't really like it. So once I graduated from film school, I bought myself a Final Cut Pro system and a Mac, and I started cutting. And a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to produce his first feature film out of film school. And I wasn't really interested in that, but I wanted to cut some packages, behind the scene packages on my Final Cut Pro system to show sort of the making of that film. And we did a webcast of that. And I was doing all that stuff using Final Cut Pro and put it out in the world. And then that got seen by James Cameron's little brother, Dave Cameron, who then had me give a call and said, hey, come by, tell us what you've learned on this small film. And we want to do something similar with Jim's next movie, behind the scenes webcast. So I started building a prototype for them. I ended up going to the Titanic expedition, was doing a webcast, and then I stayed on as an assistant editor at night and eventually became an editor on that 3D IMAX film. So that's sort of the short version of it. But I really love editing. I felt like that's the one craft of the filmmaking that comes naturally to me. I directed some stuff. That's hard. Producing, I really don't enjoy. And writing is just terrible. Like I do it, but it's not easy. So with editing, I feel like I've got a handle on it. It's contained. So that's why I picked that for myself.
So it's clear from seeing your stuff on YouTube that, you have a pretty strong grasp of, film history and the ideas behind editing, not just sort of how to piece something together and tell a coherent story, but do so in an artful way. So did that come from just being a movie fan, or how did you acquire that?
Well, I mean, just doing it for a long time repetitively and trying to tell that story that connects with an audience and failing at it. And just keep pushing forward. So when I graduated from film school, I really felt like I wasn't able to tell the story within a short film. I haven't been able to sort of wrap life into that film and make it connect. And it took me forever to really feel like, oh, now it's starting to make sense to me. And I still feel like it's hit or miss. Like I'm just trying certain things, and then ultimately I have to just see if it connects with the audience. And if it does, then I feel like, okay, I've learned something. If it doesn't, then I've learned even more. I need to try something different.
So This idea of like diving in and just, working at it and experimenting and seeing what happens. How did you find that worked out with, also trying to meet the creative expectations of directors? Or were you in situations where you really were the creative editorial authority in those projects?
So I think directors pick editors when they realize that they're storytellers. So for some reason, the thing that I wasn't able to really do with writing or producing and even directing, which is like tell a story that connects with an audience, I was able to accomplish that with editing. I was taking whatever the shots were and I was starting to make sense out of them. It's like, for me, it's like a big puzzle. And it's very contained because you only have so many pieces. Yes, you can like try different things out of what you have, but ultimately it's all there and you just need to find a way to put it all together. And that's the one thing where I fairly quickly realized just by doing it that the audience responds to it, or a director and says, okay, this is going in the right direction. So that gave me confidence to keep pushing forward.
And did you ever have any horror stories with directors who were just like maniacal about their choices and making sure you don't go off of the rails?
I do. I mean, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. So when I notice that the director is very like detailed oriented or micromanagement style, I can adapt to that. But I actually find that if it's a really experienced or really top level director, that's usually never the problem. They actually want somebody who pitches them the story back and has a point of view on it. So, and I was so lucky to be in that situation right from the get-go, basically, by working for Jim and just putting some stuff out there. And because I was so young and naive, I didn't really like care all that much about it. I always was excited about just doing something and then see if I get fired. And that resonated in a way where I immediately sort of had that confidence of, he's responding in a way where I can keep working. I can keep trying different things. And so quite the opposite. If I work with a first-time director, sometimes I do have this experience where, like, I'm a very strong editor in the sense that I have a point of view. So I'll read your script, and then I'll throw it away. And then I just look at the footage, and the footage starts to tell the story by itself. And I'm sort of shaping it. So it goes off in a different direction quite rapidly. And with some of the like more experienced directors that I work with, like Mark Webber, we've done 3 films together, and Sundance Filmmaker, like he loves that. He loves when I just come up with something completely different that wasn't even intended. But I've had the situation where I had a first-time director and I showed him my first cut, my editor's cut, and she was like completely just frustrated and said, no, we got to stop. We got to do it like from here to here to here to here. This is how it is in the script. I need to see it that way. And then I'll adapt. I'll be like, okay, fine. Let's do it that way. And hopefully at some point we still arrive at what is the best product possible, which usually is a combination of what's in the script and what you sort of discover in the process.
So I think that a lot of beginning editors, who are working for a director, learn the hard way that, they can't become too attached to creative decisions because an editor or a director can come in and undo that. But it sounds like that you got to that point pretty naturally just by nature of your personality, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel really passionate about giving it my best shot. But once I've given it my best shot, then I don't feel necessarily attached to it that much. Then I'm at the beginning, I see myself as telling the story back to the director, and then I'll become the listener. And it's like, okay, is it working? Is this not working? Is this in line with the vision that you originally see for the film or that you're now discovering in the process? And so with the right director, they love this process because it gives them a lot of choices, and we try a lot of different things, and it never feels like they never feel threatened by this. But sometimes you have to sort of really make sure that you first do the version that the director needs to see to sort of let go of it, or to say, okay, this is exactly what I want.
So you mentioned that your process involves looking at the script and then putting the script away and trying to piece together what you're seeing in front of you with the footage. Is it literally that cut and dry, or do you try to come close to the script and then you deviate from it as you work on improvements, or is it really just you read the script and then you know from your memory try to tell the same story with the footage that's in front of you?
I mean, surprisingly, it is that cut and dry most of the time, because the script really gives me an idea of what the original intent is. And also the conversations that I have initially with the director, preferably before he or she starts shooting the film, gives me a pretty good idea of what the director is looking for. And then I'll just keep that in mind. And then as I respond to the footage, I know what the vision is, but then I'm just looking at the moments for what's the potential to serve that vision or to go even beyond that. Because oftentimes, especially if you haven't done it enough yet as a writer or director, you're sort of painting by numbers. You're writing the story the way that you see it, and there's a lot of clues for the audience to already predict what will happen next. And you can really, in the editing, disguise this intent much more by just going for the fresh moments, the things that happen you didn't expect, the actors adding subtext or vulnerability or improvisation, whatever it is. You can really keep the audience on their toes and make it very surprising to them, because the story should always be plausible but really surprising. If a story is predictable, then it's very hard for the audience to stay engaged. And so you have to embrace the footage for what it is, more than I think the blueprint, because I don't get enough opportunities to work with top-level writers that completely master the art of writing, in a sense that they've already built that all in the script in. And then it's just doing the genius that they already put on the page. More often, I find with actors, I can already see, okay, they've done all the work. All I need to do is not get in the way of the actors and make sure that their performances are not being cut off or cut short.
So there must be some...
I don't know, did I answer your question?
It does. There must be some sort of visual nuance that, adding a shot here or trimming a shot there adds to a story that someone who's working with words on a blank page just can't predict and foresee for the most part. Outside, I guess you're talking about these super elite writers who've been doing it for years. But certainly you must be discovering things in the edit as you see all the footage in its complete collective that no one else had considered.
Yeah, I think that process of discovery happens in all stages of the filmmaking process. It happens in pre-production, in rehearsal. It happens on set when you shoot the film, and it certainly happens in post-production when you put it all together and then you start to realize, okay, what's not working? How do you need to get it to work? Or these are certain things that we didn't even see as we were rehearsing the scene that now start to really make sense. And the beauty of editing is there's always, I find, an organic truth within the footage. And most of the time, you don't really need to reshoot all that much. You just look for what's the authentic, real moments in the footage and put those together. And oftentimes, that's when it gets interesting.
So, sort of segueing, I guess, to your YouTube channel. What is it like, running a successful YouTube channel, which is quite active, while also being, a professional film editor? How do you typically manage these two roles in your life simultaneously?
Well, it's the YouTube side is starting to become my main job, and editing is sort of the side hustle. It used to be for the first 3 years the other way around, but it's the YouTube really put myself in a position where I can say no to projects a lot more, and can really wait for interesting films to come around. And if they don't come around, I can just work on my own little projects, and it's a viable business by now with sponsorship and all this. I have about 300,000 subscribers, and that's where it starts to become kind of where it makes sense financially to do it. And when I first started, I think it was the second movie with Mark Webber. We just came off The End of Love, which was his second feature, my first time working with him, that went to Sundance. And then he wanted to do another movie that's sort of, he loves to improvise things. There's a lot of discovery in the editing. And I pitched to him the idea to include the audience in this process and put it up online. So the first year of the YouTube channel was just me showing how I cut this feature from the very first time the dailies arrive and I put them into the system to the complete movie done. Like every other scene or whatever, they would be able to see that process of how a scene gets added to the whole film, and then ultimately they can go and see the film and have the sort of resolution of this process that they've been part of for a year. And so that's how I pitched it to Mark and say, this is a possibility to already build an audience for an independent film. It's going to have it really hard to find an audience unless it wins the grand prize at Sundance again or something. And we didn't win the grand prize the first time around, but we got nominated. So just nominating itself, you still have a really hard time finding an audience. And this would be sort of an experiment to have that audience ready to see this film the moment it's ready to be released, because they've been with the process for so long. And how did I sort of manage that? It was the first time that I cut a feature on Final Cut 10. I realized that Final Cut 10 is super fast. So the schedule that we originally had for Avid, I could easily cut in half. Because I didn't have all the processes that I needed in Avid to get the stuff ready and get it all sorted and so on. It kind of all runs in the background. I still had it in the system, but it was a very smooth and fast process. And the actual cutting process is also, I find, so much faster. So I had time, actually, where I'm like, I got nothing to do, so let's cut the episode. While I was waiting on the next scene to come. And I started putting out 3 episodes a week at the beginning, and then sort of after like a couple of months, we went to 1 episode a week. And so it worked out that extra capacity that I had, I could immediately devote to the YouTube channel.
So you started it, or you were dedicating time to it in the beginning there, just like because you had free time, I guess, and you'd rather do that than, I don't know, play Halo or something, it sounds like. So what was the transition like between, that point where you're kind of doing something for fun to, holy cow, this might actually be my full-time gig? Is it more of that? Is it more dedicating time to it in between projects, when you get dry spells in work, you work on the YouTube channel, or are we actually, putting regular effort into it on a weekly basis, for the duration?
Yeah, so it initially was the YouTube channel, and making the film was one thing for the first year. It was all part of the same process. By actually doing the episodes, it still helped me edit the film because I could revisit certain things, I could rethink. Once the film was done, then I was like, okay, what am I going to do next with this channel? I had maybe 40,000 subscribers at the time. And I realized, okay, the next thing is the video essay. Like every frame of painting was still happening. I don't know if you know that YouTuber, there was like huge, 1 million views on film analysis or basically anything that had to do with film. And he was able to really hook into a mainstream audience. And I was like, okay, I want to see if I can cross over as well. I never expected to get to 1 million views or whatever, but I thought that editing is not just for editors. I think it's this invisible art that needs to be celebrated, kind of like celebrity chefs weren't celebrity chefs before Top Chef or whatever. And I saw sort of that potential for editing as well, that we can really look at the process, and by people looking at the process, they can finally understand if a film is edited well, if it's working, because they get to see what's not used, they get to see all the choices that were made and all along. So once I started changing the format a little bit more into a video essay, I realized, okay, it's not just for editors, not just for aspiring filmmakers. It's starting to get picked up by the YouTube algorithm as well. And like some of my bigger videos, I did an editing analysis on Dunkirk, the Christopher Nolan film, and it has maybe like 1.5 million views, where I really just focused on the storytelling of how does he use the structure of the film to build rising tension. And these kind of ideas I'm still really interested in, I'm really into. I'm learning while I'm doing it, but it seems to not just be interesting to editors. And that's when I started to realize, oh, I can turn this into a business, because sponsors started approaching me, and the money that you make on YouTube AdSense is like, that's not enough to make it a business. But once you get the sponsors, once you have other ways of monetizing, then it becomes really viable. It becomes to the point where it's actually more lucrative than working as an editor, basically. And so now I'm in a position where I can do what I want, what I'm really into. I can do it when I want, and I can make a living. And I can stay here at home if I don't want to commute. And that's really ultimately what I wanted, is to be able to, now after 20 years of editing, really decide when I work and how I work.
So the video essay format is not exactly easy to make, right? It's not like doing a let's play of a video game where you can kind of churn one out in a day or an afternoon or something. Like, you must be putting serious time into each one of these visual essays, right?
Yeah, I mean, it takes me 2-3 weeks to cut a video, sometimes even longer. I did a video on Tesla. I think I cut it for two months. It took me to cut that video.
Is that the primal branding, how the Tesla kills it with branding?
Yeah.
I like the thumbnail.
And you got to just experiment. Like, some of these videos, you cut them for 3 weeks and they get 10,000 views. Yeah. And then it's all the payment is contingent on views in a way. So you have to reach certain caps. Then you just you did a project on spec and it didn't work. But you hope that like one of these videos, at least once a month, you get one that gets 100,000 plus views, and that makes up for it then. And you got to experiment a lot, try different things.
And those videos that end up taking off, I assume, are what drives the next round of sponsorships that roll in.
Yeah, in a way it does. I mean, I'm somewhat fortunate that because it's editing, it's filmmaking, there's certain brands that are really interested in this audience. It's like music libraries, Skillshare. There's certain products, brands that are willing to pay a premium price to be attached to this channel. There are other opportunities on YouTube that are much better. Like, if you're into real estate, financial advice or so, you should be on YouTube, because you can make 3 times, 5 times as much, even just with YouTube money, but also with sponsorship. But it is a good niche to be in to make it work.
So how do you choose then what you're gonna make your next video on? Are you following trends, or what's there's got to be some place that you're going from?
Well, it starts with what I'm into, because it takes so long to make these things that if I do something that I just feel like it's going to get a lot of views, it usually doesn't work out because I can't do something that's good and the audience doesn't show up for it. So I'm just sort of, I'm looking for inspiration all the time. Like I have a list of 50 ideas of the next video that I would like to make. And so just to give you an example, I was at South by Southwest 2-3 years ago. I had a film there. And then I saw, what was James Franco's movie about Tommy Wiseau, the disaster artist? So I saw that, the premiere there. And then they also showed The Room afterwards at night. I don't know if you know the story about this movie and The Room. That's like the worst best movie or the best worst movie ever. So I knew at that point at South by Southwest, I'm going to make a YouTube video about it. But I have to, and then I did a little research and figured out, oh, people already made fun of the movie. It's been done. So what is my angle going to be that it's still going to be fun for me to do it? And then I just looked at the idea of making a parody of it. And I looked at Nerdwriter, who's another huge YouTuber who does video essays. And he did a video essay on how Alfred Hitchcock blocks a scene. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a parody of that video. I'm going to take his script and I'm basically just going to change out the name from Alfred Hitchcock to Tommy Wiseau. I'm going to pick a scene from The Room and I'm basically going to follow his script and do a scene analysis, word for word, of that and see if anybody realizes that this is a complete satire. And that video went viral. I think it has like 900,000 views or so by now. And there was a point where it actually had more views than the Nerdwriter original video. And there was a lot of back and forth. There were a lot of people that didn't realize it's a satire. There were a lot of people that knew Nerdwriter. And he started to comment on it. And we started to have a little feud, like a little friendly, fake feud where he pretended like he was upset about it. And it just created a lot of buzz and it created a lot of opportunity for this channel. So now I'm like, okay, I figured it out. All I need to do is satires of other famous YouTuber video essays, and then I'll be fine. So then I took every frame of painting and I did a satire. He did one on David Fincher, what David Fincher doesn't do. And I did that with Neil Breen, who's another, like one of those genius filmmakers that you just can't look away when you see any of his films. You just fall in love with them because they're so charmingly bad.
Oh, so bad.
And I did that and it didn't work. It had maybe 70,000 views. And I realized, oh, it's the format. Even if it worked one time, there's no guarantee it's going to keep working over and over. You got to keep trying new things. You got to innovate. And once you figured it out, you already got to move on to the next thing because somebody might copy you or people get used to it. And so that's what I really love about the process of doing stuff on YouTube. I always have to be on my toes. I can never just relax and say, okay, now I figured it out, because I do one thing, it works. I'll do it again, it doesn't work. And I have to try something new.
You know what I think is really cool is you posting challenges and engaging with your followers, like the Can You Edit in the Dark challenge. Do you get a lot of people who are just like kind of newbies to editing, like submitting to these, or experienced editors, or?
Well, I get them both. I really like these challenges because they're relatively small. I get like 50 submissions over 2 months. And so it's really hard to find. Usually when you have, I did bigger challenges before and you get like 1,000 submissions, you're going to find somebody that's really good with 1,000 submissions. With 50, you might get lucky and find that one guy that's going to be good. But you have the opportunity to sort of communicate with those people and let them know whether they're on the track. So like one of the recent videos I did is like, halfway through the process, I said, okay, stop. This is what I've got so far in round 1. This is what I think people are not thinking about when they're submitting. Maybe you should be thinking about this. And then immediately in round 2, everybody upped their game. And the submissions are so much more interesting, so much more creative. So now I can make a video about that, how you, with the audience, you can really grow together in a challenge like this.
Excellent. So actually, maybe we'll take that moment just real quick to take a quick ad break, and we'll be right back. For years, Videomaker has been producing quality video training to help you take your video skills to the next level. Now you can access it all from a Videomaker Plus account. We've got courses covering everything from learning how to navigate your camera with our course on camera controls and settings to learning about color grading or even how to start a video business. Videomaker Plus has something for you. The Videomaker library is split into 4 levels. If you're just starting, try our inexpensive starter level membership, which gets you access to essential video training and a digital subscription to Videomaker Magazine. For the most professional training, go all the way up to our professional tier membership, which gives you access to our entire library of training, which covers advanced concepts like running a video business or becoming a documentary filmmaker. Plus, the professional tier is the only membership with access to our popular webinar recordings. Plus, right now, for a limited time, you can get the professional tier of Videomaker Plus for the price of the creative tier. That's $100 savings. Sign up at videomaker.com/spring deal. That's videomaker.com/spring deal. Okay, we're back. So Sven, you mentioned that the YouTube channel sort of snuck up on you and is slowly becoming your main gig. Is that really, I don't want to say by design, but is that how you want it to be, or would you rather be editing films full time and this just is now stealing your attention, or is it going in the direction that you feel like this is how you really would like it to go?
Well, let's say if for some reason this is the last thing that I do, I'll be fine. I'd be happy. Like, I'd rather do this than do something, let's say, a sizzle or commercial on a product or a brand that I'm not really interested in, where it's just a job to make a paycheck. However, I'm really loving the idea that this could potentially open up the opportunity to find new projects or more interesting projects. So, for example, I just cut a feature film by a German director, and this was the first time for me. I'm a German native, but I've been here in the States 20 plus years. And he found me through the YouTube channel and said, "Hey, I really like the process of how you describe scene editing. You seem to be a pretty mellow guy. This is my first time directing. Would you be interested in cutting a film that's actually in German?" And I looked at the script. We looked at the cast together. We met a couple of times. We talked about the process, and I really took this as a challenge that I've never would have had, is to actually go sort of back home, cut a film in German, and try to apply what I've sort of learned here, going to American film school, doing a bunch of American films, and apply that to a German film with a director that's super open-minded and really interested in this process. And it ended up being my first real international production that I was part of. The entire editing was basically happening online. He flew over a couple of times, but he also got a composer, Nick Rain, and he did the orchestration in Prague. He did the sound design in the Netherlands. His DP, his cameraman, is from the Netherlands as well. So he really got super talented people from all parts of the world who have done really interesting projects before. Like Nick Rain has done James Bond movies, and his DP worked with a bunch of oh God, I need to look it up. Can we take it? His name is Thomas Kist, and he worked with in the movie The Soup, Steve Buscemi. So Steve Buscemi directed the movie, and Thomas Kist was a DP, and they developed a really interesting technique of multi-camera shooting, where they would light a set and have multi-cameras running on all the sets. And for me, this was the first time actually cutting a film multi-camera. It's a narrative feature film. I've done TV before, but never a narrative feature film with multi-cameras. Huh. And it was an amazing opportunity to take on that challenge and cut a film like this. And it would have never happened without the YouTube channel. So I am hoping that down the road, as I keep growing, as I keep doing more things, I get to work with more interesting, or I get to interview more interesting editors or directors, and other opportunities might come along.
It makes sense because the channel is going to set you up as an authority, right? So as people watch that, watch your content, and oh man, this guy knows what he's talking about. I have a really interesting thing to work with you on, and might lead to that. I guess in that respect, it seems like a lot of channels have like they're trying to sell something or whatever else, and that's the side business of whatever or the work that they're getting on the side, but that it gives you a little bit more freedom to choose or the opportunity to get more exciting. I guess in the same way, maybe some awards or something like that would happen is the accolades lead to more interesting opportunities, or just, I guess, more opportunities in general, right?
Yeah, it totally does. I mean, I'm connecting to the editing community in a way that I've never done before. So, for example, I was able to become part of the Final Cut Pro underground user group. There's like this underground user group of Final Cut Pro editors who have this mission to convince Hollywood to cut features with Final Cut 10. And so there's some big guns in that group, and I was able to connect with some of them and make videos together. So, for example, Josh Beal, who cut on House of Cards, we did a video together where we just walked through what it's like to cut big TV shows. And we're good friends, and we're hanging out. And every once in a while, before the pandemic, we went and had a beer together. So that's a connection that I was able to, and a friendship that I was able to develop because of the YouTube channel, because people are like, oh, this is cool. Finally, somebody is taking our craft and it's representing, and it's not just software, it's storytelling. How do editors contribute to making a scene dramatically work? And how much influence do they actually really have? That's the one thing that the audience doesn't know, how big the editor a part plays. And so there are a lot of editors that embrace that process. Like I just did recently a Netflix show with Lawrence Jordan, AC, and he's a really established editor. He did a movie with Jackie Chan back in his days, and he did a movie with Sextuplets with Marlon Wayans on Netflix, and we were able to go into his editing bay, and he would open up his timeline and show his process of how he cuts the scenes together. And I really love making these connections and friendships and discovering this process as they're doing it, and letting the audience be part of it.
So there's a number of things you just mentioned I want to kind of dive into, but first and foremost, I asked you the question about what would you rather be doing, really, and the reason I asked it is because at the very beginning of this conversation, you mentioned like, oh, I learned that I didn't want to become a producer and I didn't want to become a writer, and it turns out that you have become a producer and a writer for your own YouTube channel, I guess, right?
That's true. But it's a different thing. I feel like I own it, like creatively. Yeah. So then I'm good with it. Then
you just don't want to have a boss. That's the real thing, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone, I guess, right? But also, you were just talking about how you're a part of a group that is really pushing to get Hollywood to use Final Cut 10 more frequently, which has got to put you in like an extreme minority in yes. Hollywood, right? So you mentioned you have previously edited on Avid, and now you're a Final Cut user. And I assume you've edited on Premiere. I mean, you got to be able to edit on just about anything, right? So what is it about Final Cut that so draws you to it? I mean, you mentioned the speed as the big thing, right?
Yeah, it doesn't get in the way of the creative process. I feel like I'm closest to the footage flow state. Instead of having to manage tracks and you have to do 7 clicks to tell the software what you want, the software has figured out a way to anticipate what you want, and you are just interacting with the footage, and the software doesn't get in the way. And there are many reasons why a lot of traditional editors do not love this process at all, because there's a learning curve. You have to start fresh. You have to completely abandon the old way of thinking. And at the beginning, it feels like it's not worth it. You're not taking the hump. And luckily, I was in a position where a friend of mine really pushed me and said, you're in this situation right now. You have to cut a commercial. and you have to deliver a cut to the client in 3 days. You don't have time to have an assistant ingest the footage and organize it. I'm going to be with you all the way. I'm going to show you how you're going to fight this magnetic timeline. And you're going to, within 48 hours, I promise you, you will be faster. And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's take on the challenge. And I did it. And I had to really keep it simple. I had to just do the bare minimum and the basics to just please the client. Christian Louboutin was the client. But they didn't realize it, that we were really just learning the software as we were cutting the commercial. And once I got over that hump, I was like, okay, I get it. I understand now why this is so fast. And since then, I sort of never looked back. I mean, I cut a documentary on Premiere after that. And for documentaries, I kind of prefer Premiere because of the selecting process. But for features, I'm 100% Final Cut 10.
So, we were talking earlier about how the YouTube channel has opened you up to new opportunities that maybe you wouldn't have, professional opportunities that maybe you wouldn't have had a chance at before. So, considering now you can be a bit more selective with the work that you take on, have you been able to, or have you actually declined work because they require that you edit on a platform that you don't prefer?
Well, I would never decline work based on the platform. That's like the least important part to me. I would decline projects if they're across the hill. Like that's a much bigger sacrifice for me if I have to go on the 4 or 5 to every day to show up in an office. That's a pre-pandemic concept. Now it's like, it's not that difficult to convince people to cut from home. So I would usually really make it about the project itself and the people, and then everything else, sort of the rate and the pain of actually getting into the office and whatever else along the way. But if the project is really interesting, shows a lot of potential, plus the filmmaker is really interesting, shows a lot of potential, I would do whatever. I would cut it on hit record. No, what is it called? The Windows Maker.
Movie Maker. Yeah.
Movie Maker. I don't care.
You gotta make it on iMovie.
I was going to say Chris's preferred editing software, Media 100.
Yeah, Media. You got to go back to the
cuts
and
school.
fades only.
Yeah.
Casablanca.
Yeah.
So no, I mean I'll cut it on anything. But it has to be the right project.
So if the right project comes in, how do you weave that into your work with your YouTube channel? Do you like shut down the YouTube channel for however long the project is, or do you try to make sure that you can support the channel and work on the film simultaneously?
Well, so far it's always worked out, because since the YouTube channel has become such a big part of my business, I've had filmmakers that are really open to making that part of the process. So that last director that I worked with, like, whatever you need for the YouTube channel, I'm available, take more time. It's all good because it's helping me, it's helping the film. But I have noticed with certain projects that I cannot talk about the YouTube channel. Like, I just had a project that was between a big brand and a big production company. And they were really interested in me cutting this. And once they started to, like, once I've sort of seeded the idea, we could also show a little bit of the process on YouTube, they completely froze up and the job went away because it was just too radical of an idea for them to show the process. Most old school studio system, they will not want to release anything until it's done, and they want to have complete control of the marketing. And so I have to be super careful. Just recently, I interviewed for a job on Showtime, and I did not talk about the YouTube channel at all, and made sure that none of my links or anything would include that until I really felt like they were interested in me as an editor first. And then once I have the job, then maybe I would start dropping some hints. But I first need to build up a lot of goodwill and make them realize, okay, this is a keeper, before I would bring that up.
Then do you find it's more about the indies that are like, oh yeah, we like this extra marketing that we can get through our editor's YouTube channel, than like, the big players that are like, well, we don't need that extra marketing. We got a budget for that. We'd rather just have a good editor. Is that kind of how it goes? Or
yeah, I think it's either the top level that are open, or the indies. Anything in between, scared, afraid of what would that do to us. So like working with James Cameron, for example, one of the most open-minded people I've ever worked with. Like any ideas were, bring it. Let's explore it. And so I always tell my students, it's much easier to inspire a top-level filmmaker than it is somebody sort of in the middle, or reach out to them and ask them for advice.
So I want to put you on the spot just a little bit here. If you don't have an answer, that's okay. We can just erase this and pretend it never happened. Actually, I'm going to ask you two questions for your two different roles. If you had one secret for editing that you wanted to tell someone who really wanted to make editing their career and they're getting started, what would that secret be?
Secret? I don't know if there's any secret, but the thing that makes an editor is that he's a storyteller, or she is a storyteller. And so, I don't know, figure out if you have a passion for telling stories and have a passion for working really hard and editing every day. And I think most people learn very fast that editing is not fun. It's a grind. And if you're not into it, you will probably never get good at it. But if you're really into this process of like being in this room by yourself for hours and hours and trying to solve that puzzle, and you're excited about whether the audience is going to respond to your solution or not, then editing is for you. So the secret is just like experiment a lot, do a lot of editing, and figure out if you stay excited about editing. And if you lose interest fast, then move on, try something different.
So actually there's maybe a timely follow-up here, which is that, editing, like you say, really is sitting in a dark room by yourself for long periods of time. And a lot of people have been doing that anyways over the last 2 weeks, or 2 months, I guess, 3 months.
6 months.
6 months. How long have we been?
Yeah, I don't know.
It was like March.
Yeah, exactly.
Early March.
So as someone who runs a YouTube channel independently, and someone who can edit from their home office, I assume, how much has your life changed since the pandemic hit back in March or whenever that was?
Well, on the surface, it hasn't changed all that much. Like, my business has only been growing. The opportunities have only been growing. But I do sense personally also some stress that's affecting my productivity. So I feel like I had to at some point just stop watching the news every day and get my Corona update, because it just gets too depressing and it weighs on you. And I have to say, okay, I'm just going to check in once a week and just focus on the things that I can control right now. And these are the videos that I'm working on, or the projects that we're developing. But it also just so happened that a week before the shutdown happened, we were in the middle of launching the second round of our editing course, online editing course. So I already knew there's going to be a shutdown. Anybody that's sort of keeping up with the news, you knew about 3 weeks before the shutdown happened, this is probably going to happen. And people are going to be pretty panicked at that stage. And we just launched this editing course, and we just had to just keep going and make sure people are still excited about this opportunity. And were anticipating a complete, like, once the shutdown happens, that's it. Nobody will sign up for this editing course anymore. Everybody's going to be really worried about losing their jobs and just hunkering down. Surprisingly, the opposite happened. People, after just a few weeks, realized, oh no, now I have a little time. Now I need to work on my skills. What else can I do? What side hustles haven't I really pursued to not just have one employer with an office that I can't go to anymore? How can I be still productive and create some form of revenue at this stage? And it actually ended up being not terrible at all. I mean, we still feel like it's affected, and we have some students that are affected that we're working with to make this as painless as possible. But it definitely, that shift has weighed on me. It keeps on weighing on me, but I'm feeling like things are getting better, and the less I really worry about the pandemic and the more I worry about the things that we all can control, eventually we'll be all right. Eventually they'll figure it out, and we can find a way that's hopefully better than what we had before. Where there's some working from home, there's some more reasonable hours, all that good stuff. And people are still going to want to see content, and content still needs to be edited. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to still work after the pandemic, and right now as well. I mean, there's so many editors working from home now, union editors, senior editors right now that have always gone to a production office, that for the first time in their career are now sitting at home, have a full Avid, and they're connected to a server in a cloud, and other story editors and producers, and they're doing primetime television. And they're starting to realize, this is actually not bad. This is actually a much better way of working. I get to see my family.
Yeah, especially for people who need to drive on the 405, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it cuts out 2 hours a day.
Yeah. So in one sense, working in post-production, I mean, I assume that a lot of editors have been spared kind of the economic hardship that, on-set workers have experienced recently, right? Like productions are shut down. I mean, thankfully for editors, I guess editing can continue on, like you say, from home. But in another sense, if this sticks, that has got to expand the competition, right, for editing work. If it opens up where you really don't have to live in LA to work on, Hollywood films and TV shows, I mean, that's no good for folks like you, right?
I don't think so. I think competition is a good thing. I'm not competing in the middle. I'm competing for the best jobs, and for the best jobs, you need to have the best talent. So, just to give you an example, I have maybe 4 or 5 editors working for me right now on different projects. 3 of those are not in the States. They actually, one is in Venezuela, one is in Russia, and one is in France. She was my intern. And so they are working at a level, they're handpicked editors that are fantastic storytellers. So that's the number one thing when I hire people. They have to be storytellers. And because they are in Venezuela or in Russia, they don't require a rate that I would have to pay here in LA to be able to have a comfortable life and make it work for them. So it's super competitive, and I can work with them and can get good work out of them or in collaboration with them that I wouldn't have been able to do if we wouldn't have online collaboration platforms that we have now. So I only think it's a good thing. I think the more great editors you have, the better.
So let me ask you a question, because I was listening to Mike talking about, all these, definitely editors are not being affected yet, right? But eventually all of the work that was shot will have been edited, right? So how long do you think until we run out of actual productions to complete and continue to watch? Because I'm like, okay, 3 months. Yeah, we went through a writer's strike a while ago, and stuff wasn't shot for 6 months. But then, like, TV was really affected quickly. But films got a lot longer tail. What do you think? How long would it take for there to be no more to edit?
Well, first of all, 30% of all the union editors already were out of a job immediately because productions hadn't finished shooting yet, and they shut down and they couldn't edit. Yeah. Or they could only cut a couple of episodes and then they were done. I think Grey's Anatomy had to cut their season short, and there are a bunch of other shows that just didn't get it in the can enough.
Yeah, The Walking Dead is
worthwhile cutting
on their season finale. There's a scene of a Walking Dead that they didn't shoot yet, and so they can't do the very final episode of the season, which I find is really...
The season or the series? Is that show still going?
It's a series, but I think they're still going on more. They have more script and whatnot, but then as far as the season goes, the season finale was supposed to be aired during sweeps in May, and it didn't ever even get completed shot. And so it's just sitting waiting for a couple scenes to be shot, and then they can release the episode and finish the season at least.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, who would have known the timing, really?
Yeah. I mean, I know a couple of editors who said, okay, we are halfway into the season, so we're cutting what we have right now, and then we don't know what's going to happen. And there are others who were lucky enough that they have everything in the can, and they just needed to sort of figure out how they're going to change the infrastructure real quick within a week or two to be able to do post-production from home. But yeah, you're right. Eventually people are going to run out. I mean, they now introduce, I don't know if you read the new way of how you can shoot again, all the requirements that they have to be able to open the setup again. So some people will start production and see how it goes, how safe it is, whether it's going to work or not. That's going to create new product that needs to be edited. But yeah, there will probably be less, or it will be more animation. It will be more green screen, home studio kind of content.
Well, that's what I was. I've been seeing a lot of content coming out that I know are coming from creative people. Of course, it's a creative line, but we have to have PSAs on coronavirus, so people have to get together and shoot that, or at least or you watch any of the stuff, celebrities. I'm watching a lot of the nightly shows or whatever, and you can be like, oh, they actually had a nice camera in their house, or their kid must be into production because their shot looks good, because shooting yourself by yourself, if you're not a shooter, and it looking good is pretty unlikely to happen. So it's the wide swath of what we're willing to accept on TV, at least right now, is pretty interesting. I'm guessing that eventually they'll be like, okay, I have an over the shoulder from this other scene and they're wearing something similar. Can I get away with using this shot instead of the one we need that we haven't shot yet, or whatnot? I mean, I don't know how many. You'd probably get lucky if you're able to do it, but this is going to probably affect the storytelling. I'm going to change the story because I can't get that last scene, or we're going to, ADR something so that the scene actually works because, we weren't able to pick up that shot or whatnot. Yeah.
And I recently just saw a tweet where they showed a 2-minute scene of, it was kind of a Blade Runner setting of like an actress going out of her futuristic apartment into like a futuristic elevator, going down and then going to some vendor food truck and getting food and going back up into her apartment. And then they showed how they actually did it. And it was a green screen shot on a stage that was maybe 10 by 10. But it looked like an entire city that we walked through, and it was 2 people doing the whole scene, and it looked amazing. It looked just like Blade Runner. So I feel like there is opportunity to tell stories, and they can still feel huge and big, and work if that's what you want to do. Everybody can work from home. You would be able to shoot that.
It'll be interesting to see how much those with the purse strings see the fat that wasn't necessary to make something happen, right? It's like, oh, that we don't need to cater it if we only have 2 people, or the different ways you can cut a budget up just because, we know that it can happen this way. Maybe we should go that way. Although I think when it comes to doing excellence, you can get lucky at doing stuff by yourself for a while, but I think you have to keep that luck up to be able to continue to be able to do everything. I guess obviously the story was written to fit the technology they had to shoot it or whatnot. Otherwise, they might have shot it completely different. But I guess that's always the case. Availability to locations and stuff. We're not on Mars, so we're gonna have to green screen it. Otherwise, I guess we go to Mars and try to shoot it for real.
Constraints are usually the best reason to make a story creatively interesting. Is you have to work with those constraints.
I've mentioned it, I think, on this podcast before, but one time Stanley Kubrick was asked about what aspect ratio he prefers or something. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said, it doesn't really matter. An aspect ratio is just a canvas, and it's a place to make art, and you just make that space art. And I feel like you could say the same thing about just about any aspect of visual arts generally, right? So if you have to make visual art by yourself and a camera, you can do that. It's just the canvas, and people will figure out a way to make it happen. And so I don't foresee the pandemic, even if it lasts much longer, really impacting people's ability to tell stories with moving pictures.
Luckily for these people, they're the creatives.
Yeah, exactly,
they're the creatives in the world. So hopefully you're already addressing your needs in a creative way. This is just a different kind of, sometimes people don't have enough budget. In this case, you just can't get near people. So find some kind of solution.
Okay, Sven, the other half of this question.
That was a long question.
I know it was.
That was one question.
A long answer to a short question.
Yeah.
I'll just lead into it by saying that, I have this theory. I'm hoping to get some data from Google about it soon, that during the shutdown, we would see an explosion of new YouTube channels fire up as people are stuck in their home and they're bored, or they lost their job and they want to, try to find a new way of being self-employed online. So for all those people who I hypothesize that exist out there who are starting new YouTube channels right now, what is your secret to them? How they can succeed? How they can make their YouTube channel their new full-time gig?
Well, the first thing I would say, and it's same with editing, is figure out what you're really passionate about. If you start with, I really want to be this YouTuber. Let's say I love how this YouTuber does wedding cakes, and there's a wedding cake YouTube channel that has 2 million subscribers, and I want to be that guy. But you're not really into baking at all, then don't do it. Yeah. Figure out first what it is that you're really into, that you're really passionate about, whether it's your backyard chickens or your car, whatever it is. You need to be so into it that you can quickly become an authority, because you're going to invest all your free time in doing research and figuring things out. That's why I picked editing, because I'm into it. And so I live and breathe the YouTube channel, and you need to be able to really enjoy the process of putting out 100 videos before one of them will actually connect with an audience, because there's so much learning to do, and you need to really establish yourself as well, that you need that passion as fuel. So that's number one. Number two is also the concept of blue ocean, red ocean. Look for a blue ocean if you can, which means there's not a lot of sharks in the water that already have picked there's already 300 wedding cake YouTube channels, and you want to be 301. Chances are, even if you're a real good authority in it, you might going to have a really hard time unless you somehow break out with some viral amazing cake that you come up with. So figure out, okay, what is that hobby that I'm really into that people haven't really yet embraced fully, and there's not a ton of YouTubers out there with 100,000, 1 million subscribers that are doing this already right now, pumping out content every week, and play in the blue ocean where there's not a lot of sharks.
And that's why you are making editing videos about editing and not backyard chickens. Too many backyard chicken videos.
I have a channel about backyard chickens as well. So I'm doing both. I experimented with the chickens first, and I did well. But I picked editing specifically and not filmmaking because I realized that there are YouTube channels that are about filmmaking that are already way ahead of me. So there's like Film Riot and some other channels. If I was just going to be like another filmmaking channel, I probably wouldn't have succeeded. By sort of niching down the niche to go from filmmaking to editing, I was able to sort of establish myself as the guy that's just about editing. And that sometimes is also a very smart strategy. Like right now, if you're an assistant editor, I can think of a YouTube channel that's just about assistant editing. Niche down the niche of the niche, and you could still do really, really well. I don't know, graphic design, motion effects, all that stuff. I think if you really pick it as specific as you can, I think that can only help you.
All right, great advice. Okay, so it looks like we're just about out of time. So Sven, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. It was a great learning experience.
Cool, yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you next time. Thanks to our guest Sven Pape for joining us. You can check out his YouTube channel, This Guy Edits, or you can go to his website, thegotoeditor.com, if you want to learn more about editing from Sven. So for Haley LaPlante, Chris Monlux, and we go from the top. Thanks to our guest Sven Pape for joining us. You can check him out on YouTube at This Guy Edits. You can also go to his website, thegotoeditor.com, if you want to learn more about editing from Sven. He's got a newsletter, he's got courses, the whole thing. So for Haley LaPlante, Chris Monlux, and everyone here at Videomaker, I'm Mike Wilhelm, and you've been listening to the Videomaker Podcast. We'll catch you next time.